Welcome back to Ellys Manor House. Now, just to reiterate, I've made some enormous claims, like this being the house which encapsulates a whole of early modern European and British history. Now, that's an enormous thing for me to say. So what I'd now like to do is to start to explain what I mean by that, and that's within its architectural language. Right. You will, though we've not yet gone outside, you will have seen when you see the Merchant's Way, you see the gable end of the house, and there are the step gables. It goes up in steps. Now, what that's symbolizing is basically the architecture of Northern Europe. Most people would say, oh, they're Dutch, if they noticed it any at all. But they're not. All around the Baltic Sea, you will see those buildings. You will see them in Sweden, Denmark. Most people know them in Bruges, Ghent, which all of that section of West Belgium was Flanders. And so that was our hub of culture in Northern Europe. So already we're beginning to read what the building means. And that's because in Northern Europe we stayed Gothic. Now, because this is a wool merchant's house, merchant of the staple of Calais. At the time, Calais was our main port, excuse me, for getting the wool right across down into Flanders. So what our man Ellys has done, whether knowingly or not, he's left us this building that does encapsulate. If you're able to read the building, the architectural language, then you're able to read that within the building. Just as you're able to see the classical order within the Doric columns, the Corinthian, and you've got the three classic. You've got the Doric, you've got the Grecian, and the Corinthian. And so our gables, our step gables, is equivalent to that. Now, before I get into the wall paintings and the merchants, one has to remember, long before the merchants, what we had with the nobles, they traveled around. And they basically, it was like a caravan. Even this chair I'm sitting on, if I was to get up and show it to you, you'd see it has peg in it. It's what's known as a campaign style chair, because they could be taken apart and folded. So they would be folded, as most of everything would be, and these nobles would travel, the kings and queens, almost in a caravan. And they'd get from one cold castle to another, unfurl their large tapestries, and they would hang them around the walls for comfort and warmth. Now, what we see now with the merchants, they're the first group, they're actually going away from their dwelling to work. They're cash rich. They're seeing ideas all around the continent and they're bringing them back. They want them back in their homes, thus these wall paintings. So, it's a bit of a fallacy. We see people, I remember when we'd not long bought this property and we're going about ways of conserving it. And you read all the books, you talk to all your friends who've done similar things, and you see people, they start hacking off plaster from the walls. It's completely incorrect. unless you lived in a hovel or equally a castle, and depending on the age of that castle, the walls were nicely plastered because most of them were painted. And you know, this is how, it's from that sort of ignorance, a lot of the wall paintings we have or had in England have been lost. Because people went about, you see, they were whitewashed over. The people didn't know they were there. They went about hacking off the plaster from the wall back to what is a skeleton. Now, just as we've got our skin covering our skeleton, you know, it's the same with the plaster on the wall. Why would you then want to take off your skin to expose your skeleton? Doesn't make sense, does it? And you know, this is the interconnectedness I've also mentioned on previous programs. And it's only when our attention is drawn to certain things that we start to think about it. And you think, oh my God, that is so obvious. And just to reiterate, it's like I say, we're not giving you any history lessons. There are plenty of people out there doing that. There are times when obviously I will bring certain people into fray, and especially the artists and so forth. And yes, I will give you, but it's not for you to rely on us to give you this. I want to engage with you so that you'll become engaged and you too will go off and become interested in the bigger subject, and you'll read books and you'll find things out for yourself. It's making you aware. We're sharing this with you. It's collaborative. And that's what this is about. So basically, we're now seeing these people, they're going away, they're bringing back new ideas. And it's no different actually today if you or I had deep pockets, and even to the point where you've gone on holiday, say to Spain or Italy, a place where there's a recognizable difference in the architecture. You might see a villa. You can afford to, you like the idea of what you see on your return. You start thinking, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be lovely if I bought a piece of land and I built that? And it's all basically one-upmanship. That's what it's about. It's not going to look like my neighbor's house. But what it does do, it leaves something there for us to be able to recognize it. And that simple fact that you recognize it takes you on a journey. But you can do all of that, and if it's not recognized, then, you know, it's like it falls on fallow ground. No one notices it. But if it's noticed, and we can see from this building, it hasn't been noticed. And that's why we were so surprised that a building of this importance today, no one knew what it stood for. And this is why we feel it's terribly important to bring it to your attention now. And in doing so, you will go on, you will join us on our journey. Now, we, in a part of what we've said now, in all of this, what should never be forgotten, there's the Hanseatic League. Now, it's abbreviated to Hansa, but the Hanseatic League came out of Germany. It was a guild for the merchants. Now, ironically, when it first came, this is over 800 years ago, when it first came about, they actually tried to keep the English out. We did get in, finally, and made a huge impression on things. Now, that was discarded. quite early. By the late 15th, we were seeing the petering out of it, but by the mid 16th century, Hansa had pretty much dissipated. Now, today, again, we have the Hanseatic League, and special thanks to King's Lynn, because there are a couple of people there who work tirelessly to bring back the Hanseatic League. So today, it's pretty much on the same basis. It's again culture and tourism. So we have started, well, not have started, it's been going now for a while, and we see a lot of the towns in Scotland, all along the east coast, they're now rejoining Hansa. And so each year they'll be we meet in different Hanseatic towns. Sadly for me, I've not yet managed to attend any of those, and that's because I'm so busy at the house, so I hope they'll forgive me, but we are communicating all the time. And again, we shall see the growth of this, and hopefully it'll be back to where it was. So there you are, another touch of information for you.